Wow, they're hard questions. I've done a lot of different things, and really great to be here with you, Odin, today. So yeah, Peter Nakos. I'm in my 50s. I'm not going to divulge my age, but I'm in my 50s, and my career actually started many years ago. I'm actually an aerospace engineer. So learnt the art of designing aeroplanes. I did work in the industry for some time. So. At a place called Hawker de Havilland, manufacturing different aircraft parts, and that was fun. But I left that industry and moved more into consulting and technology, and I've been doing that ever since. So still working as a consultant and as a sales lead. But this is really the passion that has led us into helping set up Three Arches Distilling. You can say that. You can say that. I think there's something about aviation and drinking, but yeah, I've also got friends who say there's something about consulting and drinking. I've got a number of friends who are either winemakers or spirit makers or producers of beer. So I think it's something that associates itself with consulting and even aviation. Yeah, look, I'll talk a little bit about how Three Arches came about, and our heritage is, my background's Greek from both sides, mum and dad moved out here in 1960. But if I look at me growing up in a Greek household in Melbourne, we always worked really hard. So I think that's the thing that we learnt as young kids. But I remember Dad as a kid, and I was never allowed in the garage. But I remember my father distilling back in the day and bootlegging, and the whole journey that we've been on. And I learned to distill from Dad. I think that's one of the wonders that COVID gave us. Being closer to your parents mattered during that period, and Dad taught me the craft as much as he could, because he's passed away, and that's been something that I was very grateful to have that time with him and learn everything about distilling that he knew. I obviously didn't learn some of the fine craft skills, because he had this ability to actually make cuts naturally just by feeling the spirit and smelling the spirit, not necessarily drinking the spirit. But the heritage there is how we came up with Three Arches. Was Granddad went to America a couple of times back in the early 1900s, and I think he left early in the 1920s when the bootlegging got busted up. But the Three Arches is meant to signify the three generations, if you like, or the my father and grandfather, and the lineage that we've had around distilling. And how we came up with a name, and it's not a play on any sort of pillars or anything like that, but it came about because we looked at three beginnings, and three beginnings translates to Three Arches, or Three Arches. That's how the name came about. So when you translate three beginnings to Three Arches in Greek, it becomes Three Arches. So that's our name, and that's our brand. And in fact, the logo, which you could see on my top, is a bridge in northern Greece. So yeah, we took a lot of time being able to get that logo right, working with different people. Yeah, it's actually up in a place called Yanina, and it's the northwest of Greece. Beautiful country. It's actually where my wife comes from. So I think my father-in-law is really happy about that. And we're actually, my family's down from the south, but it's a family business, and that's one thing that we've always tried to do, is bring our family along the journey with us. Yeah, look, interesting. bootlegging, making white spirits and starting from using grains. Dad obviously had a fascination with spirits and different botanicals and putting different botanicals in spirits. Gin was really that progression of making white spirits, but also being able to put lovely botanicals in the spirit and getting some flavours out of it. My objective would be, ideally, one day I want to be able to make my own neutral spirit with grains, because that's the base that I learnt with Dad, and I think the ability to be able to create a corn whiskey or a Melbourne-based bourbon would be something we want to be able to do in the years to come. But gin is that natural progression. And when we started looking at, how we would create a very unique gin, we looked at not necessarily using traditional botanicals, but substituting those traditional botanicals with a number of other botanicals. So, I love the idea of being able to do an ouzo one day, but use aniseed myrtle as the base ingredient instead of aniseed. But also then, modern dry gin is about how you can substitute some traditional botanicals with some new botanicals or more innovative botanicals. So, we use aniseed myrtle, lemon myrtle to substitute aniseed and lemon, but we also use Himalayan juniper in preference to Macedonian juniper in our modern dry gin, and that gives you some different sorts of flavours, some sweetness and bitterness. But being able to use botanicals from Europe as well, and Indigenous Australian botanicals, and bringing them together, we believe you can create something really, really unique. And there's a story there because we were hoping to use an Indigenous botanical called Gumby Gumby in our modern dry gin, but I did speak with an Aboriginal elder and, very easily convinced not to do that, because Gumby Gumby is a botanical that our Aborigines use as a medicine. They make tea with it. So, I'm glad we had that conversation, and, quite easily we were able to substitute that Gumby Gumby with something a bit different. We decided at that point in time we would use a Greek mountain tea. And the exciting thing about that is it grows in parts of Europe and Greece, grows at 1,000 metres. It's called sideritis, I think, or ironwort. And it brings some really, really unique flavours, and we think it really uplifts our gin and brings some sweetness and different aromas to when you drink it. So, yeah, we're excited about using the Greek mountain tea. And one of the things I'm actually in the process of doing right now is sourcing some Greek mountain tea from Mount Olympus. So there are some farmers that you're not allowed to pick it on Mount Olympus, but there are some farmers around Mount Olympus. So we're looking at getting some of that and using that in our gin going forward. So it's pretty exciting. Ooh, that's an interesting question, because you put yourself into the gin.
So your gin, Peter?
It'd probably be a combination, I think, of my kids. I think my kids, are quite different, and they take some lineage then from their mother's side and their father's side, and I think there's a bit of my father in this gin as well as my mother, and it just so happens that our stills are named after. I've named one of the stills Georgia, and that's the big 600 litre
Is it the one behind you?
Copper Still over here, yeah, Georgia. So that's Mum's name, and hopefully Georgia will produce some great Melbourne-based or southern style corn whiskey. And the other one is a 200 litre potbelly still, which we use for our gin right now, and that's named Aphrodite after my grandmother. So I think it's a combination of different family members, but yeah, there's a lot of Peter in this. There's also a lot of Amelia and James, and Dad certainly had a hand with some of the botanicals.
I'm just asking if Jim was the person
how I got into this and how we came on this journey.
Yes.
Do you want to ask the question?
Yeah, knock yourself out.
Yeah, so look, I think I've been lucky in the sense that, you know, I did mention that growing up, we, you know, Dad was a bootlegger. I remember being a young kid and being able to walk into the garage and being told, no, you're not allowed here, Peter, so go back out. But Dad and my uncle were in there making stuff. I don't know if it was any good back then, but they'd certainly make stuff and drink it. And I'm not sure whatever happened to that copper still, because Dad was a boiler maker, and I think my cousins said it was under my uncle's house, but it's since disappeared, so it's probably gone off for scrap metal. But you know, COVID, you know, gave me this idea about wanting to be closer to my parents, and I think that was probably a great opportunity to learn how to distill from Dad. At the same time, you know, I was fortunate that, you know, working in my career, I met some really interesting people, and one of the people I worked with is an owner of Hemingway's Brewery and also a founder of Devil's Thumb Distillery, and some of the advice and guidance he gave me about doing something a bit different, you know, came through, and I think, you know, COVID and doing something different, coming up with a bit of a plan B, and having seen another friend of mine who's you know, I worked with, leaving the consulting game and moving into becoming a winemaker and being very successful. It was I think something that I wanted to do, and you know, at the time I looked around. I said, geez, are there any proper courses? And you know, there are some foundational courses, but the Distillers Institute was also one that popped up about learning to become a distiller, and I met some great people and still continue to meet some great people on the Distillers Institute, and they've been really helpful in this journey and learning and doing things right and not cutting corners. So you know, it's you know, 5 years sort of in the making, probably longer, because I did develop a bit of a love affair for drinking gin when I worked a lot in South Africa. You know, and that was, I think, just a regular thing you would do, because you know, you couldn't walk around the streets of Johannesburg, so you'd go from work to the hotel and hotel to work, and drinking gin and tonic was actually really easy during that part of my life. So yeah, that's a bit of history behind how we sort of ended up on this journey, and about me, and why I developed this fixation with gin, but also where we're taking the brand and label. Yeah, that's a great question, and you know, when I began this journey, you know, and you do the course with the Distillers Institute, you know, they make you think about this long and hard. Now, what do you want to do? Do you want to build a business and sell that business in 5 years' time or 10 years' time if it's successful? Or do you actually want to build something that is kind of long-lasting and endures the test of time? And I think, you know, the background and certainly the learning that I've done, and my father and grandfather and all that, capturing it in the way of being able to produce something and take something to market, I think is something that hopefully stands the test of time and continues to evolve even after when I'm not around, right? So I'm hopeful that maybe one day the kids might want to jump into the business, but you know, I think as the business evolves, it will take another form and another life, and if the business is successful and it starts to grow, then what we'll do is look at other avenues for growth. And at that time, you know, you look at other partners and other ideas and other channels. So it's pretty exciting, but I think, you know, ask me that question in 5 or 10 years' time, you know, you might get a different answer, but I hope that we can continue on the journey of Three Arches, and Three Arches becomes a familiar brand. And right now we're still a micro distillery. We hope to grow beyond that, but that's something that time will tell. Yeah, it's very multicultural, and to me, I think this is where the strength comes in the products that we put out in the marketplace. I think we've got very unique products using the different botanicals. I think over time they'll continue to evolve, but it has some heritage around the Greek background, but it's also got a lot of heritage around the American side of our family. You know, Granddad did spend a lot of time in Chicago, and also Melbourne and Australia. I think we've got a lot to thank Australia for, and I think our multicultural universe here in Australia is what actually will make and give us better spirits. Because the ideas in the distilling community that we have, and it's just incredible. There are so many different distilleries doing different things, and I think this is where I believe that, you know, our distilling population will continue to grow, but we also need a lot of support from governments. Things like the excise tax and that, to help us become competitive and grow not only here but internationally. So to me, I think this is where we're at a point where I think our governments will realise that. Having worked in manufacturing, we don't do much manufacturing in Australia anymore. We still do it, but the distilling industry is certainly an industry that does produce and manufacture, and it uses primary ingredients from all our farmers around the country. But it also is something that we put a lot of value into, and being able to sell it locally and be competitive as well as sell it internationally, I think is the journey our distillers are going on. Oh wow, that's a great story, and I can tell you, I looked long and hard about the type of still that I would use, and I love potbelly stills. Absolutely love them. I think they're great for whiskey, and I've seen some great manufacturing in Australia. We actually bought our still from China, and you know, to me, I looked long and hard around what the Chinese were doing, and I love the ability to be able to make 2 or 3 different types of spirit from your one still. Now you can do that in a standard potbelly still as well, but I love the idea of having the ability to make vodka with a lot of boilerplates, and also the ability to have a great big gin basket and be able to pass your spirits through that and create some great gin. So that process sort of started. I've worked in procurement and sourcing for some of the biggest companies around, and let me tell you that sourcing out of China was an experience. So a lot of learning, and I think probably the only thing I would do different would be I would fly over and do a final inspection if I ever bought anything from China again, before they ship it and before I put a final payment through, because when we got our still and equipment, there were some missing parts, and then the communication is really hard to get that stuff later. But you know, we're working through all that, and as you can see, we're using our stills, and I think we're going to continue to make even better gin. So especially once we get Georgia going.